You're on mute.
Hello, everybody. Good morning and good afternoon. Welcome to another session of GitHub Copilot with Microsoft Reactor. My name is Swami, Swaminathan Vetri. Today, in this session, we're going to talk about some of the tips and tricks on how to get the best out of Copilot. All right, so before we jump into the session, this is a bit of introduction about myself. My name is Swami. I work as a lead platform architect at Maersk. I work on cloud native technologies and Azure and GitHub. I'm working on building an order handling platform for Maersk. And I'm also a GitHub Star from 2025 for my contributions on the community building. And I was also Microsoft MVP from 2016 to 2022. I've been a community enthusiast for almost about a decade now. I've been part of these different groups, B.NET, Azure Group, Get Together, Bangalore, etc. And that's my LinkedIn and GitHub handle. And apart from tech, I'm also interested in photography, traveling, table tennis, and a bit of a dance. All right. So in today's session, we're going to learn some tips about the choice of different features of GitHub Copilot, and then how can we customize Copilot to our needs, and then how we can personalize the Copilot, and also some of the new features. And finally, we'll end with prompt crafting. All right. Okay. So first thing first, I hope most of you would be aware of GitHub Copilot by now, and either you've been using for your hobby projects or at your work, work capacity. Right. But I'm sure if you've been using Copilot for quite a while, maybe for the last couple of years, you might have seen a lot of different evolution happen in the chat itself. Right. So that's what I want to touch upon first. So there are three different things as we can see now in Copilot. One is called ask mode, and the other is edit mode, and the third one is agent mode. Right. If we had started maybe an year back or a couple of years back, there was only an inline chat was first available. And then we got this chat extension in VS Code and other editors, where you just go and ask a question and then GitHub will give suggestions of code, or it helps you to explain certain things, etc. Right? But now with all these three different modes, how do we choose which is the right one? Because the choosing the right mode is very important to accomplish your task in a successful way. Right? So ask mode is specifically good at general questions. Let's say if you are thrown at a new code base, and if you want to understand what's really happening in a specific functionality, or if you want to understand what's happening in a specific area of that particular code base, or if you want to implement a new feature, if you want to understand how should I plan about going those features, should I start with file A, should I start with file B, should I write the test case or not, should I update the documentation or not, etc., etc. All those kind of questions, if you have anything on that particular repository, you can use ask mode. That's what, as I say, it's good at general questions, planning, and ideation or brainstorming, right? So that is where the ask mode would help you. That means you are not really doing any changes to the code assets. You are only trying to understand what's happening and then how you can make the changes. That's where ask mode would help you, right? And then the next comes edit mode. Okay, once you got a fair understanding of, okay, now I understand how this code base is structured and what are the changes I want to do. Now, if you want to start making edits to that particular code base, that is where you can toggle the chat into an edit mode, and then you can start working on it, right? So now this targets at multi-file edits. Typically, if you are working on a three-tier architecture, for example, if you have a controller and then a service and repository layer, etc., whenever you implement a new API endpoint, for example, you would need to go and update your controller and then your service layer and then your repository layer, etc., right? So all of these can be handled by your multi-file edit mode. And for this to work, you need to provide a good context for sure, right? Because obviously a code base could be large. So you need to specify what are the specific files you would want to change. And then GitHub Copilot will try to provide suggestions around that. And this, whenever you want to make any granular changes, either at single files or at multi-file levels, you can use edit mode. And in here, we as a user has more control, because we are telling the GitHub Copilot to go and make a change on a specific file or a specific set of files. Right? That is where that's how these two are different, ask and the edit. And now there's also something called agent mode. That means it works more autonomously, right? And this is specifically good at greenfield projects, where if you want to start certain things, if you want to implement a new feature in a code base, you can ask the agent, you can toggle the chat into agent mode and then ask, hey, can you create a new API endpoint to do this? And can you also add maybe a front-end page to render the API output, right? If you want to do all of those things, you can basically provide a functionality as a whole. And then the GitHub Copilot will understand the entire code base by itself. And then that's why we say it infers a context, right? It understands the code base by itself, and then it tries to make a change. Like I said, you could have told only about maybe a web page and an API, but there could be other surrounding files that needs changes, right? That is what agent mode will understand by itself. It makes the change, and then it will also run the change. Let's say if you are having a Node.js application, and if you want to test the change by running it, it also run those commands in your terminal, and then comes back saying, yeah, all these changes are looking good or not. And then you have an option to go and choose the changes, or kind of if you want to reiterate further, you can also do that. So this is good at greenfield projects, good for prototyping because the agent mode infers the context, and this works with more autonomy, right? So now to summarize some of these, right? Let's say the primary purpose of ask and edit mode is for Q&A, the code explanations and suggestions. But with agent mode, it's more autonomous and end-to-end code editing, right? So user interaction wise, it is manual application of suggestions because, like I said, the ask mode will only give you suggestions, and you have an option to directly click on buttons in the chat extension and then put the code into your file, or you can copy the file, copy the suggestion, and then go and update your code base, right? But in the agent mode, it's all completely autonomous, right? So it's with minimal guidance. These interaction, the agent will execute the task. And with respect to context handling, the user will provide or select the context. You choose what are the files you want to be given as a context, and then you ask the question, or you ask the copilot to edit it. But in the case of agent mode, agent auto discovers the relevant context. And when it comes to code editing, user reviews the code and then we apply the changes. But in the agent mode, agent will automatically edit, create, and run the code, right? And autonomy level is low to moderate here, and in the agent mode, it is high. That means it automatically first understands the code structure and then identifies which all files to be changed, and then it comes up with a plan about how it needs to be changed, and then it will go and execute it, test it, validate it. So end-to-end thing can be done by the agent itself. And when it comes to terminal commands, one-click run from responses, that means a suggestion will be shown in the Copilot chat, and then you have an option to go and click on it and then run those particular commands. But in the case of agent mode, you can ask the agent will automatically run it, and then it also takes the output. So that means, yeah, if you need more control and if you're working on a smaller set of scoped items, then ask or edit mode would be better. And if you want to agent to work on more autonomous fashion, then you can choose an agent mode, right? This is one thing which I've been asked by multiple people around how do I choose the modes, which I thought that's one of the primary thing for everyone to know when we start using the GitHub Copilot, right? Now, next thing is, can I provide additional instructions to make Copilot follow my standards? This is also a common problem, right? Because as everyone knows, Copilot is trained on a public code that's available in GitHub. It doesn't understand our own individual code. Let's say if you are from an big enterprise, or if you are also having certain private repositories, those are not being used for training the Copilot, right? But then, so when you get a suggestion from Copilot, we want to ensure all of our coding standards and all of our guidelines, style guidelines, and everything needs to be followed. Otherwise, what happens, it might give a certain response and we will need to kind of sit and modify it, which is not going to be very productive, right? So that's where this is a common customization which everyone needs. That's where we have something called Copilot Instructions.markdown file, right? So in here, it's basically, as I say, tailor-made answers and defined by you. So let's say if I create a Copilot instructions, I can define how should the response be coming from the Copilot. So that way, we are trying to steer the Copilot in the way how we want it to work for us, right? And when we try to write the customs instructions, there are certain tips which I would like to share. It's about, we need to keep the instructions short and self-contained. Right? That means each instruction should be a single or simple statement. And if we need to have multiple pieces of information to be provided, let's say we can use multiple lines to do that. See, think about us explaining a piece of code or an specific instructions to a new join in a company or so, right? We would want to keep it more simple, crisp, and clear, etc. The same thing is applicable here as well. Keep it short and self-contained. In the sense, you can't have multiple references of one instruction talking to another instruction and things like that, right? Keep it very self-contained so that once this particular file is passed as a context to the Copilot, it will be able to understand what's been given, and then it will be able to tailor its output appropriately. And then that's what the next point is. Don't refer to any other external resources and instructions, such as specific coding standards. Keep those standards within the file itself. And if you want, you can split instructions into multiple files. This is for organizing instructions by topic or type of task. So this is a recent advancement. I'll also show this in the demo in a bit. So you can also have multiple files, but then you need to be giving the right context of which file to be used for which of your queries, what we are going to ask, so that Copilot can make use of the right files and then it can provide the output. So, and we also want to make it easy to share the custom instructions with the team or across project by storing your instructions file. Let's say if you're working in a big team, maybe all of us might work on a common code base, right? And it doesn't make much sense for each one to go ahead and doing things differently. That's exactly why we have all brought in all these coding style guidelines and then style guide and things like that, right? Now, when we are onboarding Copilot as well as another team member, we need to ensure Copilot also understands the same set of things. So we need to, if we are able to put in custom instruction file, Copilot instructions file, and then commit into a repository, then that is available for everyone in your team. So whoever interacts with the Copilot to get their code generations or whichever mode they are working on it, they will be able to leverage the custom instructions. And since it is in version control, we can also maybe track the since it's committed into the GitHub, we can also track the version control of it, right? And there's also a thing called applyTo property in the header that will help Copilot to understand this instruction is applicable for which kind of file. So typically, let's say if you have an mono repository where you have code bases of different programming languages, your front end could be in JavaScript, your backend could be in Node.js, or backend could be in Java, Python, .NET, anything could be, right? If you want to have specific instructions given for these specific set of files, let's say whenever you are getting a suggestion for an JavaScript specific file from Copilot, you can specify an instructions file which has an applyTo property which says star.js file or star.ts files, so that it's applicable only for that. The same thing goes for other files as well. So that means you have a generic single customs instruction file that is applicable for all entire code base. Plus, if you want to have any programming language specific instructions file, you can also create that, and then you can use this applyTo property to address that. I'll be showing this in the demo in a quick while. And then the reference customs instruction in your prompt files to keep your prompts clean and focused and to avoid duplicating instructions for different tasks. So I haven't talked about prompt files, so I'll cover that next. So basically the idea is, let's say if you are continuously working on creating new API endpoints or front ends, you would be doing a repeated task. So you don't want every time to pass on the same set of instructions as part of your prompt. And if you miss that particular prompt, instructions in that prompt, then you might get undesired results, right? So to avoid that, it's better to reference these customs instructions in the prompt file so that as part of your prompts, you can also pass on this. Yeah. Okay, so the next one is about, let's say if you are, like I said, if you are working on repeated tasks, right? How can I make Copilot reuse my prompts? For example, I'm an backend API developer, right? Maybe I might create one set of API endpoints today. And maybe once this sprint is in, when a new functionality comes in, I might go ahead and create another set of API endpoints related to that functionality, right? Then do I need to keep on remembering my prompt somewhere? Or how do I ensure there is a way to basically share the prompts, right? So that is where there's something called, and also there is if there is any prompt best practices do you have, how do you share it with your team? Right? Of course, you can put it into some sort of a gist file or any other documentation what you are using. But is there any other way in which you can easily do it? There is a way. That is where we'll use reusable prompts. So with reusable prompts, we obviously, as the name says, it's reusability, so more coverage can happen. And then it gives it helps in standardization across the teams, right? And it is definitely efficient for repeated tasks. And also domain specific in that sense. Let's say if you are a security expert or if you are a backend expert, you know how you want your the backend code to be present. You can provide all those as a reusable prompt, and then your team members can start leveraging those prompts. For example, if you are a cybersecurity person and if you want to ensure certain security guidelines are followed, security standards are followed in your coding, you can also define those, and then so that anyone create a new API will follow your security guidelines, and then they would go ahead and do that. I'm going to show that in the demo in a while. And the common use cases for this are this. It's a code generation, creating reusable prompts for components, tests, or migrations. Like I said, if you're keep on creating new React forms or creating APIs and points, etc., you can use those reusable prompts for that. And then domain expertise, like I said, sharing the specialized knowledge through prompts, such as security practices, compliance checks, etc. And also it helps in team collaboration. Right? And onboarding, you can create step-by-step guides for complex process for project-specific patterns. These are some of the examples where you can use the reusable prompts. All right, now let's quickly go and see the demo. Right, so this is the sample repository which I've used in my previous session in the Reactor itself. This is a simple application which has one order web app, which is nothing but an React-based front end. And then I also have an Express.js-based backend here, a service API, right? And what we are trying to do now is first, let me explain the Copilot instructions, which is what we first saw. So this is called the Copilot Instructions.md file. The nomenclature should be the same. All right. So here, what I've done is I've just explained certain things. It's a basic Copilot instructions file. This is an Node.js-based order management project that has both client and server code. The client is in order web app directory, and the server code is here. The client is scaffold using create React app, and what are the technologies that is being used. And I also given certain key guidelines here, right? Now, when I ask, I don't have to even do this one. Let's say go to the edit mode itself, and then say, let me close this. I think I have my app defined here, which has certain order endpoints. Maybe I'll say implement endpoints for card functionality, right? What I'm saying is I'm using some of these models here, whichever is available for me. And this is the edit mode. As I said, this is where you will choose the modes, ask agent and edit. Now I want the Copilot to edit some of my files, so I put it into edit mode, all right? And I'm doing this. And then when I say next, it should now start using my Copilot instructions. As you can see, it says, I didn't specifically put anything here in the prompt, but still it is able to reference that because it's available in this folder. Under the GitHub folder, there is this copilot-instructions.md file is present, right? So now it is trying to use that and then use the instructions present in it, and then it is trying to create the entire code changes here, right? If I don't use it, I give that, it will try to come up with the code which might not be aligned with whatever I was expecting. That is where the Copilot instructions would come into picture. Yeah. So now, as I said, this is the edit mode. So it showed that these are 3 files that got changed. So first thing is card.js file got added. So it says how to get post add. There is an add endpoint, remove endpoint, and clear endpoints are present here. If I want, I can just directly say keep so that it keeps the change. And it also added this into the app.js file to the card router. And is there any other change in here? Yes, it is also using the /cart with the cart router. So maybe that looks good. I can save it. And this is again the documentation part. So I've also given instruction, I believe, to update the documentation, right? Update the AP documentation, the docs directory whenever changes are made to the AP endpoints. So that instruction is honored and it is able to go and under the docs directory have this ap.md file. It could identify that, and Copilot has updated my documentation here as well. So I can just say keep. And now all these changes are completed with this Copilot instructions. Maybe if you've not specified this, it might or it might not update your documentation, right? Here I have put documentation and then unit test also you can add. So what are the other things you want to follow? You can also provide your standards files, standards. Let's say if you want to use camel casing or if you have any specific typings you want to use, you can also put those things in your Copilot instructions.file. Yeah. So this is what this works across all the editors, Copilot instructions.md file. But like I said about task specific files, if is something which is pretty new and it's available, it's an experimental feature for VS Code alone. That's why you see this instructions folder here. So I've created an ASP.NET STP instructions.md file here. This is something I picked up from an existing repository. I'll also share that link in a while. Right. So this is an exhaustive list of instructions for anyone who's going to create an ASP.NET ASP.NET API file, right? So where it could be useful is I also have this small .NET API, the project here inside the same repository. Let's say I go to program.cs file, and now I'll use this file. Plus, what I also want is, as you can see here, there's an add context button. If I click on it, it says instructions here. I can choose instructions and then say ASP.NET REST APIs instructions. And now what I'm saying is, apart from the Copilot instructions.md file, which is generic for the repository, I also want Copilot to leverage this specific ones. Maybe, for example, I'll do the same prompt again, implement card functionality. Now I'm going to get an C# or an ASP.NET based endpoint for that, right? Implement maybe new endpoints for card functionality. Yeah, so now as you can see, it's picking up all these 3 things, right? I also have this code generation instructions, which is present at my settings level. That's why it also shows that there are two ways you can set it up. You can also, as you can see in the settings, I put specific file. Here, these are some of the instructions. You can also add the instructions here so that it can pick that up, or you can also add it into your repository. So this is at my IDE level, right? Whatever I put this instruction, that works for my VS Code instance. And if you put it into the Instructions.md file and you commit into the source control, then it's available for everybody. Yeah. And I see a question: do you really need to attach the instructions manually? So I was able to get it working only by setting up the context here, because otherwise by default it was pulling the Copilot instructions.md file only. All right. So that's why I had to go and add the context here, and then it is able to pick up those instructions. All right. So now, did it create the file? Sorry, did I commit the? What did I do? Okay, it looks like it didn't create it. It just added in the card file only, JS file only. Okay, I think again the context is a problem. I think I didn't really provide the right context, I guess. It's just only 3 references. The program.cs file is something which I have, I think I didn't, it's not added here. Yeah, I missed to see that part. Yeah, that's why the context is important. Otherwise, as I said, the code can be generated in any other files as well, right? So this is a live demo of how and why it's very, very important. Okay, now next part is the reusable prompts, which I talked about, right? So again, how do we give you the reusable prompts? You can have a prompts folder, and then you can create any of these prompts. Let's say this is also an example which I picked up from an publicly available data, right? So this, let's say if you are an open source contributor or an open source maintainer, and if you want to look at what are the pull requests that are available, which are available for you to review, and if there are anything that Copilot can review and then get back, etc. So this is a simulation of that part here, right? So what I've done is, this is like the mode agent mode. That means this would work in the agent mode. So I can just go ahead and move that agent mode here. And then these are the tools that are applicable for this particular prompt, right? And as you can see, some of these are from the GitHub MCP server. So I've also configured that MCP server here. So if you go to list servers, I have this GitHub remote server running. So basically what this prompt will do, as you can see, list my pull requests in current repository. Search the current repo using GitHub repo for the repo info and list any pull requests. Display the purpose and details of each pull request. If PR is waiting for someone to review, highlight that in response. If there are any check failures on the PR, describe them. If there was no review done, assign it to Copilot review. Right. So this is what is a thing here, right? So now how do I run this prompt? So all I need to do is just do a slash thing, and then you can see these different workspace prompt files showing up here. I will just say my pull requests, and then when I say enter, so now this is going to use my Copilot instruction, these two. Plus, it would also start leveraging the MCP server. Did I add the MCP server as a context? I need to look at that. Maybe not. Yeah, okay. So I just verified that the MCP server is up and running or not, but I didn't really add it as a context to this one, right? So that's again another, another important thing to look at. When you set up an MCP server, the server could be running, but unless you provide that as a context to this particular prompt, it will not leverage that. So now I've added this MCP, GitHub MCP remote server. And if I do that prompt again, saying my pull requests, now this should be able to leverage the MCP server and then go and query the pull requests available in here. Yeah, as you can see here. See, now it started identifying my user profile and then trying to search the repositories, and then it'll try to get the data from it, right? Yeah, so somebody is asking about applyTo file. So what happens is that applyTo, this instruction is applicable to these file formats. Whenever Copilot creates these file formats, at that time it will use the instructions which is present here, and then it will create that particular file. Yeah, that is where the applyTo is there. That means you can have multiple instructions inside this instructions folder. As you can see, this is one repository which I created, which has both JavaScript and then C# files here, right? So you can create one more instructions file for JavaScript specific instructions, and that will be applicable for that. Okay, so here is where this did. So now let's say if I want to do this every day, if I don't have this reusable prompt available, I might end up doing the same things here, right? Coming every day and then asking, okay, list all my pull requests, and then I want to do all of these things, right? So this is an this is where these reusable prompts will come into picture. This is one example. Another one which I also have is creating a minimal API with Open API. For example, if, like I said, if you're a backend developer and then your job is to keep on creating API endpoints, you don't want to keep on typing the same thing every day and giving all the instructions to go with it. That's exactly where these reusable prompts will come into picture. You put your entire prompt and what you want to do, and then you can use that to create it. And you can also add more. Let's say if I use this and then say create new ASP.NET web API endpoints for our functionality. All right. Now, since it's an agent mode, I would expect it to understand the files where it needs to. Yeah, okay. So it's trying to find out that, and then it will try to create an API endpoint with that. Yeah. So, and also you can also even further customize this. I haven't gone into too details of the reusable prompt itself because I've got other things to cover. You can also you can also pass inputs to this particular prompt. In the sense, if you are working on a documentation or if you want to create an architecture decision record, you can do a slash prompt and then you can provide inputs saying create a record, create a decision record for this is what is the topic, and or if you want to create a new model file for a specific thing, you can also use all those things. All right. So basically, the idea is reusable prompts will help us to put all the reusable prompts in a common file and then commit it into the code base so that any of your team members can also use that. Right. So here, yeah, it says it try to understand all of these instructions. It says you have also called domain and service layer. I'll now create a minimal API endpoints. Right. And then it's trying to do that here. Yeah. API endpoints to be created. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And then it's trying to make an edit here. Right. So this is how, because we mentioned in the prompt saying you need to use a map group extension and then use the endpoint filters for cross-cutting concerns, etc., etc. It will try to apply all of those instructions and then creates the code suggestion. Yeah. Maybe I'll just click on key now. I don't have time to validate fully, but of course you'll need to validate it completely. It's in every line and then ensure it is all working fine. All right. Okay. So again, since it's an agent mode, it's asking, should I go ahead and run the .NET build? I'll do that. And if there are any errors, we can, of course, fix it and then we can proceed further. Right. But the point is, yeah, we understood how we can use custom Copilot instructions. And also we understood how we can look at the reusable prompts to fast track some of the repeatable activities. Yeah. Okay. All right. Moving on to the presentation. So now, can I personalize the Copilot response? So what we've been doing is we were asking Copilot to use a additional context, and additional information. But what if I want to get a personalized response from a Copilot? Right, that is what we're going to look at it. This is more from the way how you want Copilot to respond to your queries, right? There's something called personal instructions, and this is applicable for GitHub website chat. All right. So that's what I put. If you have a personal instruction setup, it takes the precedence, and then comes your repository level instructions, and then comes your organization level instructions. All right. So what I mean by that is, let's say this is my GitHub Copilot. I put a personal instruction saying always keep the response crisp and clear, and use a casual tone, and then provide the reasoning for the responses. These are some 3 things which I put. Right now, if I go and ask, should I use Azure Traffic Manager or Azure Vendor? Maybe I'm just asking a simple question. This needs definitely a lot more elaboration. So let's see if it is able to honor my thing, and then I know it's able to respond in a crisp and clear way. See, as you can see, it just gave only few details because I wanted it to be very crisp and clear. Maybe if I remove that, it might give more reasoning as well, which I've tried before, right? So it really, it's up to you. How do you want to have the conversation going with the Copilot? So that's where you can use personal instructions. Like I said, this is the first precedence it would take, and then if you are if you are asking anything about an organization repository, then comes your repository specific instructions, and then if you have the repository specific instructions comes in the middle, and then comes your organization specific instructions if there is any. Okay, this is a quick, simple tip. And now, how do I choose between agent mode and coding agent? I hope some of you have heard about this coding agent. If not, we did have a session last month in Reactor itself. Please check that out. So coding agent is one step further than the agent mode, which we just saw in the VS Code. That means you can assign a particular issue, GitHub issue to coding agent, or you can tag coding agent in the VS Code itself to start creating a pull request. That means it completely works in autonomous fashion. As I showed here in the agent mode, it showed the step-by-step instructions to me, and then it also asked in middle, should I go and run this command or not, right? So none of these inputs you'll be giving if you're working with an coding agent, because as the name says, it does the coding for you, and then it will create a pull request. So it starts with the context and with an issue. And the instructions, whatever we've given, and the Copilot instructions or this Instructions.md, all those things would be applicable for coding agent also. And then it would go and create, PR at the end of it once the work is completed. All right. So now, how do you choose between agent mode and a coding agent? Right. This is also a common question which we all have. So the agent mode, as I said, it's mostly focused on the inner loop, in the sense you are trying to now implement a feature, and then you are taking help of Copilot to help you create your documentation or create your unit tests or create your code, etc. But the coding agent comes as an outer loop. That means you just have a problem statement at hand and you want it to work autonomously, and it would come back with an outcome from that. Right, so it does understand the code base, and then it has to understand where the code should be changed, and then what all tests to be modified. How do you validate the output, etc., etc. Everything will be done by the coding agent itself. So agent mode, typically you'll initiate from IDE with various choice of context, but coding agent is something initiated from IDE or GitHub.com, and you will always have a full repo context for that. You can't choose specific files or anything like that. And there is a human involvement in every step of iteration, but in the coding agent, it's completely autonomous. So, and the feedback is via direct file edits or reprompting. As you saw in my previous demos, I could go and reprompt. I can stop it in middle if I found out it's not working properly, and then I can reprompt it, and then I can steer it the right way. But you can't do that in the coding agent. Once it starts working on a specific problem statement, you'll have to wait until it completes it and then come back. Right, and there's also choice of models to the users in the case of agent mode, but coding agent is not explicit at the moment. Right, and then it's also better for tasks where close monitoring and steering is needed. But in the case of coding agent, it's better for tasks that are less complicated, less ambiguous, where minimal intervention is needed. So it's really up to us to identify the right set of tasks and then leverage the right set of features. Right, and of course the pricing model also differs for both of these things. That also is another factor to be considered. But I try to put together the feature set primarily, and not really on the pricing and other aspects now. All right. Yeah, somebody's asking about a sample report, prompts and instructions. I'm going to share an awesome Copilot instructions report that has for all the different projects and everything. Maybe I think I can quickly share it right away because somebody has asked about it. Let me see if I have that. Can you guys see my screen? I think it's still visible, right? Yeah. So this is a repository. I'll also ping this link in the chat here. So this is the repository that has all these different instructions. As you can see, it has custom instructions, reusable prompts, and custom chat modes. The instructions what you saw in the demo is also something which I picked up from here. Right. I picked up this ASP.NET REST API development itself. Right, which is what you've seen there. So this has the Java instructions.md file as well. This is all community created content, so you can go ahead and pick it up and then reuse it as per your need. Right, so this has all the things, custom instructions, prompts, and then also chat modes. Chat modes is something which will come to it in the end. Right? But this is where it is. Yeah. Okay, so now back to this one. All right, so now I talked about coding agent, which is going to do by itself everything. Now, how do we customize it? How do we know what kind of setup it needs to do, and how can we make it work the way how we want? Again, that is where the two things comes into picture. One is Copilot instructions, which we saw. Like I said, for agent mode or coding agent also considers this Copilot instructions.md file, and then it uses the instructions here to create the code. And there's also another thing called Copilot setup. I know I didn't explain fully about coding agent, how it works, because that needs a dedicated session by itself. So to put it crisp, it basically creates a new GitHub action, and then it creates a new GitHub runner. It uses the GitHub runner, and it sets up the entire the code base in that particular runner. Okay, so that means first thing what the coding agent does is it tries to understand what is the particular repository and then what kind of setup it needs to do. Right. So it might take some time. And if you have any specific needs for your application to run, then that it will become difficult for the Copilot agent to understand it. Right. That is where we use something called copilot-setup-steps.yml file. I'll also show that quickly here, so that it become a bit more clear. So I've put in this workflow. I have something called copilot-setup-steps.yml. This is nothing but another GitHub action. All right. And the job name should be with this name. So basically what we will do is we will put the steps here, because this is a simple Node.js based application. I have just put only these steps. If you have any specific things to be taken care, you can put this. For example, if you are working on maybe with Azure, if you want to deploy certain things into an Azure, if you want that to be done by a coding agent, then you might need to add your Azure login steps with the OADC and other things here. Right. The point is, if you use this particular YAML file, whenever an coding agent starts a new session, it will use this to set up the runner. And then on top of that, it will start downloading the code and then start analyzing the code, and then it will start working on the further changes. Yeah. That is what is about the coding agent customization. And then, yeah, I know I'm jumping between multiple things. Let me quickly see if there are any other questions here before I move on to the next one. Okay, this is here. Okay. I'm sorry, struggling with a bit of an Windows here. Okay, that's fine. So yeah, I think all these what we've been doing is by typing in the prompts, right? So can I see what I put is, can Copilot see what I see? Let's say if I have an screenshot and I wanted to explain what is there in that particular image, can I do it? Or I want to implement an UI, and can I give my UI screenshot to it, then can it implement it? Is the thing, right? That exactly, it is very much possible. There is a vision support in Copilot Chat. So you can add image attachments as chat context. It can be on github.com or VS Code or Visual Studio. So especially for front-end devs, it's going to be very helpful, right? And then there are several methods with which you can do that. You can drag and drop the images, or you can paste the image, or you can attach a screenshot as well. Let's quickly see an demo of that too, so that it's clear for us. For this, maybe let me create a new session here. And I'm going to add context, files and folders. Do I have anything in this repository? No, I don't think I have put anything in this repository. So what I will do is I have a small mockup image. Where is it? I think I want to drag and drop, so it's not happening. So I have put an image. So that image looks like this basically. So I've created a small order tracking kind of a page where I just wanted to put in an order number, and then it should say whether it is pending or processing or shipped or delivered or whatever it is. Right now, I want to create an order tracking page of this in this format. And now let's see how we can leverage Copilot to do that. Right. So first thing, let me close all these irrelevant files. That's very important, right? We need to ensure we have the right files open so that it understands the context. Now, what I would want to do is my front-end code is in the order web app. So maybe I will just say files and folders. I'll say order web app. So I want to say implement order tracking page as per the mockup attached. So I'm in agent mode. So I'm trying to do these things. Let me go. I think this is fine. The tools, maybe for now, I'll just remove my remote MCP server related stuff. Okay. Now let me go ahead and click on this. Now what it does is it tries to understand the mockup, and then it will try to look at what are the different things it is able to infer, and then it will come up with the code suggestions for that. As it happens. Let me also see this here. Okay, now it's creating something, auto status and blah, blah, blah. Search mockup page as per attached, and then it's trying to create this particular file. And ultimately, finally, we should be able to get the same view. Order tracking form. It says track order with title. And then I can also see this order status map. I think it's also creating this tracking step under circle, etc. So that means yeah, it is trying to understand what was there. Basically, like I showed in the picture, we have something like this. This is a picture. Okay. Yeah. So this is what it is. It has the stepper controls and the dates and other things, which is what it is also trying to create it here. Okay, change it the app.js. Okay, let's keep this change. So yeah. So in here, as you can see, it has these stepper controls with circle, check, and other things. So maybe let's quickly try and run through this to see if it really works. This time I have, okay. And so I'm gonna come out of this. Order web app, npm start. Okay, so yeah. So this came up here. So this is a new page, which we have order number, enter order number, click on track button. Right. I mean, I haven't entered anything, so it just says track not found. Let me also run my backend. Order service. Yeah. And then say npm start. Okay, so this is something in there. And then now I would just want to create some order here. I'm going to also do that. Okay, the order is created. Order ID is 1. Okay, let's go back to this and see. Okay. Okay, here it says, okay, I'm able to fetch it here already. One which we created is there. But then I think this is having some issue. Of course, yeah, we need to go and fix it and then find out what's happening. For the demo purpose and for time, I've just directly ran it. But I think the high level idea, at least it's clear, right? So we are able to use the vision in here. So at least this part is available now, order number, track, another thing, which is what is shown up here, track order number, the text box, and then the track button here, right? We can go and always fix it. What is that implementation that's created for that order button handle, etc. Right? So that's about the vision parts. It's not just about typing and text alone. You can also leverage the vision capability of it as well. Let me close all this. All right, let's go back to the presentation. This is what we just saw. And now let's say if you're working on a big enterprise or again on an open source developer, sometimes we would want to get the response on a specific set of knowledge articles or specific documentation which we have, right? I work for a big enterprise, so I always take that example, right? So one of the common challenges is onboarding new team members into your team, right? Or sharing the existing best practices and then the knowledge with others in your team or in your organization, right? So with general GitHub Copilot, what happens as we saw so far, what we saw so far is we're able to make it work on a specific repository, right? But what if we want to make it work on a collection of certain other existing knowledge articles or collection of existing knowledge base, right? So that is where we're going to, that's what we're going to look at next. There's something called Copilot Spaces, which is again in public preview now. So here, Spaces will let you ground the Copilot's knowledge instead of code or documents or notes and things like that, right? As you can see in the image here, you can choose the repository files or folders or the text content you can add in there, or you can add certain GitHub issues or pull requests, etc. Or you can also upload your code into the space itself. Then what happens is any question you ask on that space, it knows its space and it's going to respond only the data which is present within that space, and it will not going to do anything outside of it. I mean, of course, it can do outside of it. It really depends on how do we want to steer again by giving the instructions. But the point is, the first look is primarily on these specific knowledge data what we are putting here. Right in here also, you can add custom instructions to a space so that we get more tailored responses. All right. So, like I said, it helps in maybe in onboarding aspects or in the case of sharing the knowledge with the different teams, etc., etc. Right, let's also see a quick demo of it so that it becomes even more clear. So for that, I would open my GitHub Copilot, GitHub again. Okay. So when you open the Copilot in the sidebar, you should see the spaces here, right? Which is what it is. And you can go and create a space for in your personal space, or you can also have it in an organization level. Organization spaces are much more helpful. So that, like I said, so that the cross team collaboration and the knowledge sharing and everything is become a lot easier. Right. So for this demo purpose, what I did is I created a new space and I made it as a VS Code doc space. Basically, I wanted to understand a few things from the VS Code itself. Right. So what I did, as you can see here, if I go and edit it, I should be able to add attachments. As we can see, add attach files or folders, or you can link pull requests and issues, or you can also add some local text content, right? So I did this and I chose, you can choose any public repository because I'm working on my public handle, you can do that. If you're working in an organizational repository, then you can only look up the organization specific files there, right? So what I did is I've added some of the documentation files from VS Code docs, right? And then I also added this instruction saying if the questions are not related to the content available in this space, politely refuse to reply. All right. And then I created this space here. So now what I could do is I know this is a doc specific space. So now I can go ahead and ask when should I use ask mode versus edit mode, for example. Right. If I ask this question, it should be it should be looking up the documentation present within this space, and then it should try and help with that answer. Right. Here's a difference based on your context ask mode and edit mode and then reasoning. Right. And the reference also it says, right. I see the why ask mode and why edit in the sections in the attached documents for more details. So again, this comes very in a crisp way because my personal instruction says that. It is also applicable for this chat as well. Right. And also I said provide the reasoning for the responses. That's why you can see and reasoning at the end of it too. Right. So I try to combine multiple, customizations into this, and then I'm trying to showcase here. Right. So let's say if I try to ask the question, maybe what is the role of Azure vendor? I'm just trying to simulate some question which is outside of the space to see if it is able to answer it or not. Actually, it should not because we put so as you can see, sorry, I can only answer questions related to the content available in this space. If you have questions about Copilot chat modes or Copilot in VS Code, feel free to ask. See, it also nicely provides the context that it is able to answer from, because that's what it has been set with. Right. When I showed the doc space configuration, I showed that there are only these are the attachments which are present here. Right. All these are around the chat and the edit functionalities of GitHub Copilot. Right. So that's a quick demo of spaces. Again, this would be very helpful. As I said, if you're an enterprise, you can choose the repositories, organization repositories where you have certain the discussions, or you have your documentation about your common platform or anything like that. And then people can go ahead and then start asking queries around that. If you use a general GitHub Copilot, it might not be able to help you on that part, but the spaces would definitely help you to get those right answers. Yeah. Okay, so that's about the GitHub spaces. I'm just looking at time. Yeah. So, and then the next thing is about customizing the chat behavior. I think some of you have seen already in the demo. I also had other chats, right? So we already have seen 3 different chat modes. So one is ask mode, edit mode, and agent mode, right? But what if you want to create your own task specific chat behaviors? For example, whenever I go to this chat mode, I always want to get some feedback on a specific thing which I want to do. And one example which I again picked up from that awesome Copilot repo is about, let's say, if you are looking for some Azure best practice suggestions, or if you're looking for some cloud native suggestions on how it needs to be done, right? Then you can create your own custom chat mode and then provide those instructions so that the Copilot will behave like that persona, and then it will try to give you responses, right? That means you can predefine some other configurations to tell you the AI chat behavior, and also you can switch between these different chat modes too easily. So again, let's quickly see the demo of it. There's my VS Code. Okay. Let me quickly start a new session again here. So as you can see, and I click on this down arrow here, there are multiple, these are the built-in ones, and here it says customs. At Azure Principal Architect and then the planner, and you can also do configure modes here. Create a new chat mode file you can create. So that is what would go under this chat modes folder inside this repository. Or if you want at an user level, you can put it in the user data folder itself, right? So how does a chat mode file look like? When I go here, this is a planner chat mode. Let's say this is a planning module. as it says, right? This description, generate an implementation plan for new features or refactoring existing code. And these are the tools that this can use, right? And here you can use local tools or MCP server tools as well. These are all the local tools available here. So the instruction says you are in planning mode, and the task is generate an implementation plan for a new feature. Don't make any code edits, just generate the plan. And then the following consists of markdown document that describes the implementation plan, overview, recommendation, implementation, and testing. All right. So what we could do is, let's say if you want to use this mode now, I can go here. Instead of agent mode, I will go into my planner mode. Right. And then maybe I'll also add the context. Again, I will use the same thing. I'll go and choose my file folders as maybe this .NET API itself. And then how do I implement a checkout functionality? Or maybe checkout APIs. Let's put it that way. How do I implement checkout APIs? Okay. Now, with this guy, since we are saying it is a planner, it will generate and plan for us to review it. Two references. Here's the implementation plan, like what we mentioned here. So you can see here, right? We said the plan should contain all these things: overview, requirements, implementation, and testing. It just exactly does that, right? On overview is an implementing a set of checkout APIs and Express.js server. I know I gave .NET API, but it looks like it picked up the Express.js server. Add a new REST endpoints for Express.js server, validate code contents, blah, blah, blah. And these are the implementation steps. How should be the API design be? How should the server-side implementation be? Right? And then client-side integration, documentation, code quality, etc. And this is how the testing, what are the unit testing you will need to write. Right? So now you are very, very much clear that in this particular chat mode, you are only looking for a plan. Right? If you are using either an ask mode or an edit mode, it might have also given an additional code suggestions for you to also to review it and then go ahead and make the changes in the code files. Right? So that is where I feel this will be helpful is if you're clear on a specific task and if you're more frequently doing that task, then you can customize these chat modes and then you can you do that. So there's also one more thing, which again, it's called an Azure Principal Architect mode. I picked these, like I said, from the common GitHub repository only. Thanks to the community who has put in a lot of these different things there. Right, so this is more elaborate. This is a description, and you need to give an suggestion by following the well-architected framework principles and Microsoft best practices. Right, and also you can also use Microsoft Docs MCP server if it's available, so that you can query the documentation and then help with the response. Right, so now what we will do is we'll try to again ask the same question: when should I use Azure vendor versus traffic manager? Right. So now because it's in this chat mode, it also says, can I search for this in the documentation? It's what it's asking. I am going to say continue. I hope my MCP server is running. Okay. Yeah. It's also again asking for the another documentation for the second one. Best practices from this one, right? And now this is what it says. What is good, what is bad, and what is let it generate. Yeah. So here also we've given all these things: requirement validation, documentation lookup, primary WAF pillar, all those stuff here, right? So it tries to also put those things. See what is Azure Friend, what is the primary use case, and then what is the WAF pillar focus, and what is the trade-off, and then the reference architecture. It pulled up from the reference architecture, right? This in my view is a lot helpful, and then it simplifies a lot of things for us, right? Once you create these particular chat modes, then you don't have to, whatever you want to ask about anything on the Azure related stuff, you can ask this, then you're going to get the response in the same format. So that will also help you to make any decisions on what basis you want to choose one over the other. And it gives nice links to all the reference documents and everything. All right. So that is how we can basically customize our chat modes as well. And I believe chat modes is also currently available in VS Code, if I'm not wrong. All right, and all of these things are very fast evolving. So maybe when I speak today, it could be available in one editor and it could become available the next editor in the forthcoming days, right? So please always keep a look at the GitHub changelog to understand which functionality is available in which editors and what is up to date on those functionalities. Yeah. So that's a quick demo about custom chat app. How much time do we have? Okay, so 5 more minutes. All right. Then the last thing is about the MCP servers. I just have some certain pointers around the tips alone. Right. We first need to ensure right MCP servers are chosen for the right task or session. The reason why I'm saying this is yesterday when I was working on something, I chose the GitHub remote MCP server, and then I asked to make a code change, and then without seeing the responses properly, I said continue, continue, and then the code change got committed into the remote instead of having the code change done in my local machine. Right. So we need to please ensure always right MCP servers are chosen. One is if you don't choose it and if the servers are running, it is not going to work, which is what we also saw earlier in the demo as well. Right. And also limit the permissions always. Ensure you have predominantly the right tools or not enabled. In whichever MCP server you want the right tool, only ensure you have enabled that. Otherwise, any code can be committed or anything can be written. All right. And whenever you are configuring MCP servers at the github.com website, use the secrets. You can use copilot_MCP underscore prefix and then provide the secrets so that you won't be ending up committing the secrets of the MCP servers into your GitHub repository. Right. And as much as possible, leverage the remote server and use OAuth whenever available. If OAuth is not there, then we can look at PAT tokens and other keys. Right. And also keep on reviewing the connections to ensure if it is having the right connections going in and out. And also monitor the activity, what are all being read by the MCP server, or if it is any write access server, what is being written. So all of these are also very important. And I quickly swim to the MCP server. MCP by itself needs another good round of discussion. So maybe we'll leave that for a different session altogether. And finally, with all these in place, what is very, very important is about the prompts, which is why I said back to the basics. These are all some of the new features and functionalities that are there to help us out. But unless we create the prompt in the right way, none of this is going to work properly. Right? That is why I meant as back to the basics. Right? So these are the pillars of effective Copilot prompts. Right? You need to have the right context. You need to have the right intent, the clarity, and then specificity. Right? Context is information what we provide in the prompt. And then the intent is what is the specific goal? Are you intending to understand about something? Or are you intending to write a code or write a unit test or update a documentation? We need to be very clear on that intent. And then there has to be clarity in it. Just saying that create an API endpoint is very ambiguous, right? You need to specify what kind of an functionality we're going to work on so that it is easy for the Copilot to understand it. And then also be more specific. Just having and generate a random number or create a function for XYZ, something is not going to work at first, right? So be more specific, then it would, give the right responses. All right. I think, yeah, these are some of the customization best practices. The trick is think of your code in common just prompts, right? If you want to share certain code samples in your prompts, you can also share that or put that into the Copilot instructions. And I guess providing examples will help. And of course, you might not get the right answer always the first time. You might need to iterate it. All right. And then using a clear distinctive variable names will impact the quality of good generated code. As they say, garbage in, garbage out, right? If you don't have the right code and the right practices baked in into the current repository, Copilot cannot automatically fix that, right? It also tries to follow through the same set of standards what is maintained. So the more cleaner code we have, the more organized, and then the better structure and the names and everything is properly managed, we'll get a better outcome from the Copilot as well. Yeah. And this is what is explained in depth in each of these. So yeah, first thing is if you don't succeed, iterate, and that's the only way to get better at this. Right. Yeah, these are some of the references. And then, yeah, if there are no questions, I think I'm pretty much done. I know I kind of rushed through towards the end. If there are any specific things, if you want to understand, please feel free to ping me in LinkedIn. I'll be happy to, help you with any specific questions. Let me see if there are any other questions in the chat here. Okay, I'm looking at the comments here. So I see a question around can this Copilot has good integrations with Bitbucket. I've not personally tried that out. Right. But once you download the code on your local machine, I think it's all in your IDE, right? This all happens in your IDE. So the coding agent, as I said, it works on GitHub issues. Maybe that you may not be able to leverage it, but still, I'm not sure even a pull request, it can be created in Bitbucket. I need to double check that part, Pavanraj. Yeah. All right. I don't see any other questions. I hope you all learned something new today. Thank you so much for joining. We'll see you all in another edition of GitHub Copilot session. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.